It's time for the Double Stop with Brian Sword.
Welcome to the Double Stop podcast. I'm Brian Sword. This week, I've got Aldo Novo on the show. That may not be a name you've heard in a while, but he's been really active this whole time and has had a really interesting career. He's a free agent, doing whatever he wants, and he seems to be having a pretty good time with it. So let's get going. Here is my conversation with Aldo Novo.
I was born in Montreal, Quebec, in Canada, and my musical family was absolutely non-musical. The only thing that we did is we come from a tradesman type of family, and we all come from a bunch of perfectionists. Whereas my dad worked in steel, and he was a perfectionist. My brother's also a perfectionist, and we're all very independent, which is where whereas why I do everything myself, all of us do everything ourselves. We're all independent. That's our main trait. So that's why I learned how to do everything myself. I mean, I'll watch somebody for a week or a day, and then after that, they're out of a job. So that's basically, but nobody in my family at all, uncles, cousins, nephews, nobody's musical at all. I'm basically the only one.
And then what drew you to music in the first place then?
It was a strange situation. I've always wanted to play music. I think from a very early age, at 4 years old, I used to walk by this music store with my mother, and they had a ukulele hanging in the window, and I always wanted that ukulele for some reason. And one day she bought it for me, and then my brother sat on it, and then he broke it, and then he sort of glued it back together, and it was never the same. But my mother died of a car accident when I was 13. So to sort of alleviate the pain, I asked my brother to buy me a guitar, and he bought me this $20 guitar with an amp. And I basically locked myself in my room for about maybe a year and a half, and never came out. And when I came out, it sort of like I played really well. And then I just kept playing and playing. I sort of ate the guitar, and there was nothing that I didn't want to do anything else. I just wanted to play guitar.
And were you self-taught then?
Yeah, I'm self-taught, but back then it wasn't like today where you have YouTube and all this stuff where if you want to learn a song, you just like click on the song and you have like the sessions. Back then you had like 33 1/3 records or 45s on the turntable, and you'd go like 1, 2 notes, and then you go bing, 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 bing on the guitar, and then you go back the same 2 notes until you get the 2 notes. Then you make it go forward a little bit more, and you get those 2 notes. So, I was trying to learn Jimi Hendrix and Little Wing, and, I think it took me about a month and a half just to get through that. So it wasn't like the same thing as it is today. Today the kids have it like, they're spoon-fed. I mean, they have everything at their fingertips with the internet and everything. I mean, if they want to learn anything, they just go on the internet. Back then, we used to have to go to the library and get books and learn. I think it was much more, much better time. If you wanted to go see your friends, you'd go out in the street and play a game of street hockey. And now they're like, my son, he sees his friends at school, then he goes home and he plays, he contacts his friends through Skype and he plays World of Warcraft. They don't see each other.
Oh, yeah.
And if he wants to talk to his friend is right next to him, and he's texting him. So there's no social skills anymore. They're just dead.
Oh no, it's a different time for sure. And I guess, and a lot back then, it was also guitar magazines. Some sheet music in a guitar magazine was what we had.
Yeah, some of it. Well, then they invented tablature, which made it a lot easier. Thank God for that. So tablature was fun. I enjoyed that. So they still have that. But the guitar lessons are pretty good on the thing. I use YouTube now because I enjoy playing at home and like learning like Journey songs or Christopher Cross or Earth, Wind and Fire and Billy Joel and Elton John. So I'll go on YouTube and I'll get the piano tutorials and I'll learn how to play other people's songs. I mean, it is very useful, But I mean, going back to being a guitar player back then, you used to have to really like pick and choose your songs. My first song that I learned was 25 or 624 from Chicago because it was like, na, 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 it was like, it's just one note going down. So that was like, you picked your song. Okay, I'll start with that one, and then you like move your way up, and then then it was Peter Gunn. I think it was Peter Gunn was the first one, and then after that it was 24, 25, or 64, and then and it was funny because distortion pedals, they sort of existed, but I'd read that this guy called Link Ray, who was like a rockabilly guy, would put holes in the speakers to get distortion. So I would poke holes in my speakers to get distortion. I mean, my guitar was worth like, with the amp, it was worth $20. So I mean,
Yeah.
so it wasn't a high quality. I think the action must have been like a foot, an inch and a half off the fret. So it wasn't really the best, but it was all I had, and I dug guitar. I just wanted to play music. That was my thing.
So at 14 or 15, you emerged from the bedroom and you can play a little. Did you join a band at that point?
No, I could play like Hendrix. I couldn't just play a little. I mean, I wailed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And did you go right into a band at that point?
What did I do? Yeah, I started this band. It was more progressive because the music got to be a little bit more. I started listening to more like Yes and things like that, and Genesis, and it would vary between like ZZ Top one day, LaGrange, and then it would be like Yes and the progressive stuff. Depends who I was playing with, but we'd have a garage. We'd always practice at the drummer's place because the drummer would always have the most lenient parents. For some reason, the drummer would always have the most lenient parents because he's the drummer, so of course they could tolerate noise. So we'd always play at the drummer's house. But I lived in a very remote area of what they call Rivière de Prairie, so they didn't have a bus system. So it was at least 2 miles away from where I lived to where he lived. So rain, sleet, or snow, I would take my guitar case, which had like a Gibson SG in there, a wah-wah pedal, a volume pedal, a fuzz pedal, and I think it must have weighed about 95 pounds. And I'd walk 2 miles back, 2 miles there, 2 miles back to rehearse for 2 hours and just jam. We just come up with like a riff and we jam, and come up with do some Santana back then or whatever. It was fun. It was a great. I mean, every kid should do that. I mean, it's like, I think it's the most fun music is just learning how to interact with people.
And were you working on your vocals at that point too?
Yeah, I was always singing. I always sang. I always wondered. I never understood why people don't sing. To me, it was just like, well, first of all, nobody else sang, so I sort of was always like pushed to the front, like to sing. So. And I was doing covers. I mean, it was like that's how I learned how to sing, to imitate. If I was doing a Hendrix song, I would imitate Hendrix. If I was doing the Beatles song, I would imitate the Beatles. So, and that kept going on when I started playing club bands. I would either play disco songs and play like those high disco girl songs, or I was like even in Beatlemania, I would play like George Harrison and sing all the Beatles harmonies, and I do old rock and roll, and I do all the old rock and roll sounds, but I was all imitating somebody else. But through that, I found my own voice. But even in my own voice, when I did my first record, I was copying either Christopher Cross or Ario Speedwagon or somebody else. I mean, in my first record, I had a very American twang in my voice, which wasn't normal for a kid from Montreal. So I was always like sort of emulating somebody else. I'm more natural being somebody else than being myself. I don't know who I'm supposed to sound like.
And throughout your teens then, were you gigging around Montreal or were you venturing further away from there?
We were venturing further away from that. We toured around Montreal. We toured like to Toronto, through Canada, northern states. We did quite a bit. By the time I was 17, I was my original profession. After my mother died, my dad remarried. I didn't get along with his wife. I left home at 14. I got a job, I think, at 16, being a welder. I was a welder for about a year. Then, fortunately, I got a job as a salesman in a music store, and from the music store, I got noticed in the music store, and then got a job playing with this act that would play everywhere. So by the time I was 17 years old, I was making $400 a week, and this was, I don't know what year. So $400 a week at 17 years old was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I've always been playing music, and I was playing cover bands, always singing, so I was always playing music,
Now, for your first record, what led you to there? Now, that was an American deal you got, right? Or was that a Canadian deal?
It was an American deal. We
That's what I
started with
thought,
a Canadian, I was signed by a Canadian publisher,
Okay.
but they brought it to an American company, and Portrait and Lenny Pizzi, who's still a great friend of mine, is still like a mentor of mine. Listening to it, he had signed Boston Heart and all these big bands, and he just liked the sound that I had, which my sound was heavily influenced by Boston and by all these bands, REO and these very harmony influenced bands with harmony guitars and I mean, if you listen to the first Boston record and listen to my album or listen to REO's High Infidelity, you can really pinpoint the influences. I wear them on my sleeve. So he liked the sound, and by that time, I mean, it wasn't, that record went through so many different phases, because when I started doing the record, I was doing more like new wave, like Gary Newman, things like that, and then one half of the record was new wave, the other half was a little more rock, and one song that started it was a song called Psycho Ward, which then became Take Me Away after Eric Bloom changed the lyrics. So then after that, they heard that direction and they said, well, write more. And then I started writing like Hot Love, Under the Gun, Fantasy. And then when I shopped at a record company in Canada, they said, well, you only have half a record here. And then once I got the funding from the American record label, we decided a direction which would be the rock thing, which was better for me because I got a chance to really like show off my guitar chops and play more guitar.
How are you funding all those demos then?
Funny story. A guy came to me in the music store and asked me, he says, do you write songs? Which I didn't, and I said yes. He said, do you have experience in the studio? I said, I do, which I didn't. And that's funny because I had all these instruments at home. And I lived in a basement, and I had a burglary, and I had the amazing synthesizer called a Yamaha CS60, which weighed about 15 tons. So they stole everything, my Les Paul, my Fender bass, everything, but they left the synthesizer there. So on the synthesizer, I found a way to sort of semi-sequence the thing so it sounded like new wave. So with this guy, I wrote a song called XR7, which you can find on YouTube if you look for it. And it's a very new wave, British-sounding thing. And he said, okay, come to the studio, record. So I started recording there with an engineer, and then I started doing it myself. Then I recorded a couple of different songs, and then the guy actually put it on a recording, got a record deal, but then he just disappeared. So the studio said, well, we know you're really the guy who's doing everything, so you have two choices. Either you continue your demos and we'll try to get you a deal, or you owe us $10,000. So I said, well, I'm not an idiot. I'm going to continue doing the demos. And from there, they took the demos to Midem, which is a music expo in France. And a publisher from ATV heard the songs, and he didn't what he was more impressed with was the fact that I did everything myself. And he came and meet me, and after that, the music, I said, evolved, and it turned into more rock. And then I got interested I got interest from the American record label, and the record just took off like a bullet. I don't know, I can't explain why. And Fantasy was on it, and I was talking to Lenny yesterday on the phone, the president of the record label back then, and I didn't even like Fantasy back then. And he said, you got to put it on. It's just like something new I'm working on now. I mean, there's one song that he loves. I can't stand it. So it goes to show you can't be like objective at a certain point, especially now like I do. I mean, I do like completely everything now. I'm completely self-contained. I mean, I even do my own videos now, so I mean, I don't want to deal with anybody.
I saw some of the videos, and we'll definitely get to that. But Fantasy, you get a U.S. deal and Canadian deal. Were they the same deal, or were they separate labels?
Well, no, the publishing deal, there's the Canadian deal was a publishing deal, which is different. It's not a record deal. The publishing deal, what they do is they sign and they take your publishing rights. Now, but they paid for the recording, and then they got their money paid back plus a percentage of the deal. So everybody was, by the time the record came out, everybody was in the black except me. So of course, the artist is always the first one to get shafted and the last one to get his money. I mean, it's like
yeah. So the record comes out, and how quickly did it take off for you?
Well, we did the video, and even back then I was like really a stickler. I argued with everybody, the record company, the director. I mean, I was in there cutting the video, and the director was calling the record company, and I was in there. I wouldn't let I locked the director out into the cutting room, and basically the video you see, Fantasy, is basically me and a guy called Kent Beta, who went on to become Steven Spielberg's main editor after a while, and that was Fantasy, and that got on MTV, got on heavy rotation, and that was sort of that's what sparked the whole thing, because of the look. It was a concept video. It had a main recurring character, the nerd. It was, it had a laser beam. It had me in a leopard suit back when I could wear one, and it had the band. It had like a live band. It wasn't too complicated. Didn't have really a plot, but it had once it got to the live thing, it didn't have like a girl and a guy in a bed or anything like that. It was just like the band playing, audience having fun, and that's what I find to be like a decent video,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it just got the music, the band, the people really liked Fantasy, and it just took off. I mean, here I am, like 35 years later, and the song's still getting played, and people still love it.
Yeah, exactly. And how old were you then when that song came out? Were you probably still in your early 20s?
I think I was 23, 24, I'm not sure.
And how did your life change at that point?
I started touring quite a bit, and I went to San Francisco, got myself a great band over there. I love the guys. We had a great time. I went to some tours, did a lot of tours, toured with the BOC for about a year, toured with Cheap Trick for a year, and I don't know, it was just fantastic. I mean, had a great time.
On top of the world.
Yeah, on top of the world, but young, innocent. So it was fun. The whole thing about the first record, why it worked, is because it was innocence. There was no premeditation to it. It was like I didn't know what I was doing, although I did know what I was doing, but it was all heart, soul, and instinct. It wasn't really, I'm going to put this chord in front of each other. As a matter of fact, if you listen to the first record and you analyze it, there's only 4 chords on the whole record. It's like let's say the Fantasy's G minor, B flat, F, and C. Okay, well, Hot Love is C minor, E flat, B flat, and F. It's the same change. They're all the same. Every song is the same. It's just the melody that changes.
Wow.
Yeah, it is.
That's great. So, okay, you have this massive record, you tour for a couple of years, and then it's time to come back and do a follow-up.
Well, with the second record, people are expecting to come up with the same thing, and I just didn't want to do the same thing. I wanted to come up with like a concept record. Back then, people didn't understand what I wanted to do. I wanted to come up with a subject and all these different, with the same, theme through the record and different songs, though of having a commercial, still having a main theme all the way through. And so it wasn't really as understood by the press or, like I said, the president of the record company really done it, but, the press didn't really, they were expecting like the same thing. Although now it's seen as like one of my most advanced records because the way it was made, considering they had no sequencers, no MIDI, no computer, nothing to make those things do. With if you hear like Armageddon race cars or Armageddon with all those things going like sequencing going, I mean with the technology that I had and the sounds that I made, it's like you're going, how did he do that? You know, so it was just a lot of perseverance and perspiration. That's all it was, you know.
And how much control over that record did you have?
Oh, a tone control.
Yeah.
I always had total control. The only record that I didn't have control on was Twitch. And it's the record that I despise. I can't stand that record.
Oh, okay. So, okay, we'll finish up on subject first, though.
Okay.
I remember Monkey on Your Back. I saw that video all the time. You had such a massive record in the first one, but the second record did quite well too, didn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a double platinum now. It picked up after a while. It did word of mouth, and people were like, you know, like now I'm doing like I'm not doing a lot of Facebook, but I do more than a lot of other artists. Like I do like, you know, special things for the fans, and a lot of people talk about the subject album. You know, Monkey on Your Back. I just did an acoustic version of Monkey on Your Back, which not very many people would even attempt, and. You know, a lot of people come and see the site, and so people now are just picking up on the subject record, and even to this day, it sounds super advanced.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back then it was maybe it was too advanced back then. I don't know.
You think you were too ambitious, and people just didn't get it?
Could be.
Yeah.
You know.
Let's move on to Twitch then. What happened on Twitch when you say you lost all control, or at least you didn't have total control?
I didn't say I lost all control more than, you know, I started writing with co-writers. I find that with all my albums, I find that there's, you know, it always should come from inspiration. The inspiration should come from someplace above you or someplace inside you. And with me having, I wouldn't say being a control freak, but the fact that the inspiration should never be diluted. And in other words, the beginning seed and the end plant should resemble each other. In other words, if you have a seed, the plant should reflect what the seed should, in other words, it should be one and the same. So if you have a product which starts as a diluted product, or even if it starts as something which is an idea, and then goes to go through different engineers, different writers, different something else, different record company opinions, different like that, you end up with a very diluted product, you know? It's as if you're cooking a recipe and then you have 10 different chefs in the kitchen. You're going to end up with some crap to eat. You know, there's no way to doubt it. And that's what happened with that record. Just too many cooks in the kitchen, and I just don't like it. I don't like my vocal performance. I like some of my guitar work, but I don't find that it's really it's not really reflective. It's not really an Aldo Novo record, let's put it this way.
Now, you've had a couple of relationships throughout the years that have been pretty long standing. You've got Celine Dion and Jon Bon Jovi. Let's start with Jon Bon Jovi. How did that relationship start?
Well, that relationship started when I was mixing my first album at the Power Station, and the Power Station is one of the most well-known and most best-sounding studios in the world. It started back in New York, still is in New York. It was bought up by Avatar. It's called Avatar now, and it's still one of the most highly regarded studios in the world because of the room, the live room that's in there. And Tony built and designed that room. His name is Tony Bon Jovi, and he's Tony's cousin, but older. And so he got hired to mix my album, and he taught me a lot about mixing, you know. And so John would sit and was making coffee out in the hallway. That was his job. He would be like sort of a gopher or things like that. So I would go out there and get coffee, and I'd see him there. And so I sort of talked and had a lot in common. So I'd invite him in to listen to this stuff. And he'd come in and he'd go, wow, this is like really great stuff. So I invited him over to my house, and that's how the relationship started. But I mean, then by the time I had sold 1 million records, he asked me, or his cousin asked me if I wanted to play on the demo to Runaway. So I got there, and on the demo to Runaway, it was me on guitar, Tim Pierce on guitar, Frankie LaRocca on drums, Roy Bittan from the East Street Band on piano, some guy I can't remember on organ, and Huey McDonald, who played on all the Bon Jovi records on bass, who's with him now.
Yeah.
On bass, and that was about it. Then I played keyboards, and then I sang all the background vocals, well, most of the background vocals on the whole record, me and a guy called Doug Katsaros and John, we did all the background vocals. And so that's the first Bon Jovi record. Then Runaway became a hit, and that's how he started his career.
Now, was that version of Runaway, was that the original demo, or was that the version that ended up on the album?
That's the version that ended up on the album. Actually, the band didn't even exist back then. Tico was playing with Frank in the Knockouts, and Tim Pierce was playing with Rick Springfield, and he came into the session. Tim was amazing. I mean, great guitar player. Roy Bittan was from the East Street Band, so he played great piano.
Yeah.
Dave Bryan was just a friend, and he still wasn't playing with the band, and they joined later, I think.
Now, that relationship with Jon Bon Jovi came back then for Blood on the Bricks.
No, it never went away. In Young Guns 2, that whole record, I stayed in John's basement for 2.5 weeks, cutting every demo to all the songs on that album. That whole Blaze of Glory song, that's every arrangement is me, and most of the arrangements on that record is me. And we left from his basement to go to Los Angeles, and even though we had a producer, all the musicians would come to me to figure out to ask me what to play, which drove the producer out of his mind. But John says, let him do what he wants. It's okay, So we through the years, we've always had a connection, So it started in 1990 with Young Guns. I mean, as a matter of fact, on my Facebook page, I just put a picture of the band there with Little Richard, Waddy Wachtel, Ben Montench, Kenny Aronoff, and Randy Jackson wasn't there, but this was way before he did American Idol as a judge. He's a phenomenal bass player.
Oh yeah, he's great.
And then to basically, for all the work I did on Blood, I was still, we were writing, how Blood came along, we were writing for my Blood album, and then he got a call from Emilio to write a song, and I happened to be at his house, and he said, I need the demo, and I went home, and I did the demo on Friday, and I sent it to him on Monday. He recorded the vocal, and he sent it to Emilio and the producer of the movie, and there it went from there. I had a great time. I got to play with Jeff Beck, and I got to watch him play.
Yeah.
Jeff hates guitar players. Jeff loved me till he found out I was a guitar player. Then he wouldn't talk to me anymore.
Why? Why does he hate guitar players?
He doesn't like guitar players. He loves cars, but doesn't like guitar players. And it was so funny because Christopher Guest would come and visit. Nigel Tufnell.
Yeah,
he would come and visit, and it was fun to see them both together. It was hysterical.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, what was your question? I'm sorry I cut you off.
Obviously, that was a massive success. Again, that was a huge hit. Was it then that you brought him in to produce Blood on the Bricks then?
Well, we sort of, I was just sort of kept sending him songs, and we decided, when I sent him a song called Someday, he decided that, okay, it was time for me to do a record. Then I went back to his house, and we just wrote for months, and as we were doing the Blaze of Glory record, or the Young Guns 2 record, we just kept writing and writing on our off days, and we'd fine tune the stuff. And then when we finished the Blaze of Glory record, we took some time off, and then I went home and demoed all the stuff, and then we just decided it was time to go in the studio. Then I sent my demos out to Kenny Aronoff and the various musicians, and well, actually, Blood on the Bricks is basically all me, except Randy Jackson on bass and Kenny Aronoff on drums, and that was it.
So Phil X then, was he just part of the touring band?
Phil X was part of the touring band. Yeah, I had a great touring band. Phil X at that point was just a local musician in a suburb of Toronto, and I went to. I held one audition. It was in this. I think it was not Sudbury, but a small suburb of Ontario, and I called Phil. Phil had gotten the bass player and the keyboard player, so I walked into this recording studio, and there was Phil, Tim Harrington, and a guy called Howie Bertolo. And between the three of them, they had more hair than Cousin It in the Adams Family. And I said, okay, let's play this note. And it was just bang. They had every note, every vocal, everything. And I said, okay, song 2. And I said, okay, you got the job. That was it. It was one audition, one time. I didn't have to go looking for people. That was it. And Phil was just, after that, we toured, and he got a lot of exposure. And then after that, we did, I produced Leave On, and we stayed at John's house, and I got to use the Blood Band on his recording, so he got familiar with Phil. And Phil was pretty well known in L.A., I mean, you know. And then he started to do his Spread Americana videos, and, you know, Phil's quite the character, and he is a phenomenal guitar player. And, you know, all the guitar players that play with me, I give them, like, a lot of leeway. They can play a lot, you know, so I think he's phenomenal. So, as a matter of fact, I just talked to him the other day.
Oh, great. And obviously he's doing well?
He's doing amazing, yeah. He just went back home. He finished his tour. He's newly married. He just got a new baby, and life's good with Phil.
Now, let's move over to Celine Dion, because, God, I remember seeing a music video with you and her sometime early 90s, but I think your relationship goes back even further, doesn't it, to sometime mid-80s?
Yeah, it goes back to, I think, 80, 85, something like that. Yeah, I worked with her I started working with her when she was 13. In her first French album called Incognito, where I produced 3 songs. But the main thing with her is that when she had to perform on the Junos, I had a song called Have a Heart, which I wrote with Billy Steinberg, and I produced the demo. I produced the actual song that they used as a recording because they lip sync over there. And she did that, and that basically got her a record deal. The Sony English department signed her on the spot, and then they used the song. They got what's his name? David. Oh God, he's probably gonna kill me for not remember his name.
David Foster.
David Foster. Yeah, they got him to produce the album, and they have a first hit called "Where Does My Heart Beat Now," and she just took off. And it was an amazing talent back then, and said her albums were like really well done. And she just moved on and moved on and moved on. And then I wrote A New Day Has Come, which was one of her biggest songs, and that was #1 in 24 countries for 6 months. And then I wrote like 5 songs on Taking Chances. But, you know, like I said, in today's economy, I wrote 3 songs and won a Grammy for Falling Into You. But that was like the time when people sold 31 million albums, you know. Even though having 5 songs on Taking Chances, the record barely sold 2 million copies worldwide, so it's a different market now.
You still work with her occasionally to this day, don't you?
The thing is, does it exist? I mean, she's playing Las Vegas. I don't know what she's doing. She put out a record, you know. Did it go anywhere? I don't know. I didn't even hear about it. I didn't hear one song off it, so I offered some songs on it. Didn't get any. I think I got some feedback from Richard Delp from CBS, but they should have used my songs because the one song I did hear was crap. So I mean, I don't know. I think the guy that used to be her A&R was Vito Loprano. I think he did a great job at picking out her songs, and because she didn't even want to do A New Day Has Come, I think much in the same way that artists don't really, like I didn't want to do Fantasy, she didn't want to do A New Day Has Come. We have to be sort of coerced into doing your stuff. It's sort of like you're blind to where the possibilities of where you can go at. So I don't know. I really don't know. I think the relationship is still there because of the respect that we have for each other. But I'm going in different directions. I've become very much of a hermit, self-sustained. I know what I'm doing. I'm going in a different direction. I see the record business. I found a way to screw the entire business. So I'm just waiting for my moment. When I see things like artifacts from Jared Leto and how he has to sue his own record label for 30 million records and for $30 million, I don't want to get caught in that. I mean, I had sold, after my first tour, 3 million records, and I had toured the world, and when I came off the road, I wanted to buy a $200,000 house, and my accountant said I didn't have the money. And I said, well, where did it go? I said, well, your manager put it into touring. And, that was like my publishing money, is like my retirement fund. And it shouldn't have been put into touring, So, that was mismanaged and everything. I guess it happens to everybody. I've read about even Billy Joel. He got screwed for $75 million. So I think you just live and learn, and, things just happen in this business. But now it's even worse now. Now it's like almost epidemic proportions. So, I mean, like I said, 30 Seconds to Mars is suing the record label for $30 million. I mean, somebody's going to come around and just you have to find, there's another way to make money now. And I think you have to be self-contained, totally self-contained to do that.
And that seemed to start with you on Nova's Dream. That seemed like a big change, and it sounded like it was, like you said, that you in a studio doing your thing by yourself. Is that how it was?
Yeah, me, a couple of cases of beer, and a microphone and a guitar and a console. Yeah.
And how was that?
Yeah, no, that's what it was. Basically, I had a deadline. I said, okay, so I had 2 months. So in 2 months, I basically sat there, I wrote a song, I'd record it. I sat there, I wrote a song, I'd record it. I mixed it, and it was the most fun that I've ever had on a record. I had a record that also went unnoticed, but now people are discovering it, and they're seeing that it's it was very advanced, it was very musically challenging, great playing, great, very, it's just a different record, There's a lot of variety. I mean, I'm not stuck in one genre, which I wouldn't want to be, It's like I'm a Heinz 57 variety. I'm not just like just stick me in one pot, It's like I'm sort of like a gumbo. I don't, it's like it takes a lot of ingredients to make me up,
At that point, from a fan perspective, it seemed like things got quiet, but that's not really the case, because you were contributing a lot of music for a whole bunch of other artists.
Right.
Was that a new phase of your career as a songwriter-producer, like for other people?
Yeah, I did that a lot. I mean, I'd done a lot of it, especially as a writer. I would go I was signed to publishing companies, and I would do a lot of these writing camps, and I did This Is the Night for Clay Aiken. I did You and I Were Meant to Fly. I did New Day Has Come. I did I Love You for Faith Hill. I was even writing for opera guys like Roland Tyrant from the Irish Tenors.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, I went through a phase like that, but then a couple of years ago, I just went to, I just said, nobody else is going to do my songs anymore. It's only me. I'm just going to sing my own songs, because I find that when I do the demos, I always sing my own demos, and the people that sing them, whether it be Celine or anybody else, just copy all my inflections and everything, and they copy every note, every inflection, everything, and they don't put anything of their own. So I said, well, I'm just going to just keep my songs for myself and just do them myself.
And with the way technology's changed, you can have a home studio now and have it be maybe not quite power station quality, but damn near.
I've always had a home studio anyway. I've never not had a home studio. I mean, I still have the whole of the 155 input console in the basement, but now I make music with an iMac and a $199 program called Logic. So that's all anybody needs. All the plugins come in there. All the plugins are there. Everything is there. It does you can go up to 200 tracks of audio if you want, and a bunch of MIDI tracks, and it sounds great. I mean, I don't need more than that. Less is more.
Well, let's talk about that then, what you're doing now, because I see all kinds of stuff on your Facebook page, which is interesting. You're doing your own videos, all kinds of just recording some tracks, like you said earlier, that you're doing some acoustic versions and just popping them out there. How freeing is that, and what's your goals here?
Oh, my goal is, first of all, to a lot of people don't know that I'm still out there. A lot of people think that I sort of disappeared off the face, which they have every right to think that, because I did disappear off the face of the earth. So my thing with the Facebook page, which I had started a while ago, and then I shut it down because it was just, I'd lost control of it, because it was a 24-hour day. It was like it became incessant. It almost became a disease. And then I started it up, and my fiance said, okay, well, do like an hour a day and do something. So now I post like a unique picture, or a picture you can't see, or I'll do like an acoustic monkey, or I'll even screw around and I'll take my videos and I'll do Shining Star, and I'll cut my own self to Shining Star, which is quite funny, but it's really well done, Or I'll take Prelude to Paradise and I'll do CGI and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's all unique stuff that you can't see, that no other artists on either Facebook or on YouTube will do. People will have secretaries and they'll do this and that, and but they don't actually physically do it themselves. So what I'm doing is I'm just reacquainting, people that I'm there. Hopefully by word of mouth they'll say, well, go check this page out, and it's all free anyway, so it doesn't cost you a cent to see these amazing pictures and hear me sing Monkey Live. People realize that I'm 57 years old, I'm still damn good looking, and and I sing like a motherfucker. Excuse my expression, but I can still sing my ass off. So it's it's not bad. But I wouldn't go touring. I've done that. I tried to do some touring. It's not cost efficient. You come home with $20 in your pocket. Everybody comes home with more money than you, so it's not worth it. I sit at home, I play piano for my girlfriend, and I learn other people's songs. And last song I learned was Sailing from Christopher Cross. And I downloaded Earth, Wind and Fire's greatest hits, and I dig that stuff. And today I downloaded Rewind from Rascal Flatts, and I think country records are perfection, the perfect harmonies, perfect sound. If you're an engineer, perfect drum sound. The harmonies are what pop records used to be. Everything is perfect. Some of the stuff, not the real twangy stuff, but the modern pop country,
And how do you see the new music that you're writing? How do you see it releasing it? Because there's so many options these days. You don't need a record label anymore.
I'm still working on that. I don't see music to come out as an album and just throwing it against the wall, just putting it on iTunes and not really, if you just put an album on iTunes, well, then you got to promote it and tell people to tell you that people that you have a song on iTunes is one thing. I don't do that. What I'm doing is I would write something which I'm working on. There's more of a big multimedia thing, which would involve like a show, a large show with like either a circus type thing or a large lights and just multimedia, which would play on different stages in different countries at the same time, different cities all at the same time with the same type of music, with a story and things like that. That's what I'm working on now. Just a regular record with like the 10, 12 songs that are disparate and don't have any themes or anything like that. So I think that's gone. I don't think like that, and I don't believe in cookie cutter music, putting a record out every year and doing your tour and touring the country and selling, merchandise and just for the sake of doing it,
Yeah.
I don't know. What's the use? I have a family, I have kids, and I want to see them grow up.
It's fair. It's fair. Even though the multimedia, multi-city, that's a big guy. Like, that's ambitious.
It is, yeah, but what the hell? I'm an ambitious guy.
There you go. Love it.
Only when my plan is perfect, then will I actually put it up. Till then, I'll just keep writing more and more songs and scrapping the old ones and putting new ones in. And, it doesn't stop. My creativity's never stopped. I mean, my brain doesn't stop,
Yeah.
I'm like a sponge. I have to keep learning something. Like, if I see, I don't have to necessarily be, creativity doesn't have to be like just music for me. It could be like, editing or making videos or writing a TV concept or writing a cooking show, stuff like that. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I have all different kinds of enterprises. So everything has to do with creativity, but creativity is not limited to necessarily just making music. Art is art.
And that was Aldo Novo. I hope you liked it. We'll see you again next Monday on the Double Stop Podcast.